Thank you to PlayStation for sponsoring this video. This video will explain the entire story of Death Stranding 2, including the main quest, the individual character stories, and the ending. Death Stranding 2 has a new combat system that's been completely revamped, and a living world that allows you to connect with other players via their creations, but this video will be focusing on its new and incredible story. As always, I want to issue a spoiler warning as we'll be talking about the entire game, while also mentioning that there are timestamps below if you'd like to jump to a specific section. And if you need a refresher, feel free to check out my video on Death Stranding 1's story. It is admittedly not strictly just a story video, but rather part story analysis, part story review, but it will serve as an excellent resource to get you acquainted with the game's concepts. And finally, huge thank you to PlayStation for providing me a code for the game early. Without further ado though, let's get started. So when we last left off, our protagonist Sam Porter Bridges was hired by the UCA or the United Cities of America to reconnect the country to the chiral network in hopes of overcoming the Death Stranding, the apocalyptic event that destroyed the world. By the end of the game, he had succeeded in doing so, but the decommission order for his BB Lou had finally come in. Deadman tells him to incinerate Lou, otherwise necrosis will set in, which risks the possibility of a void out. However, he also suggests taking Lou out of the pod just to see what happens, but that carries with it a high chance of failure, as BBs are designed to only live inside the pods. Sam would also be going against the laws of the UCA if he did, given the rules that surround the bridge babies. At the end, Sam decides not to kill Lou and instead takes her out of the pod, and through sheer luck, Lou pulls through and survives. Death Stranding 2 picks up 11 months later. Sam and Lou are living in Mexico far away from the UCA. Still sticking to what he does best, Sam has just completed an order with Lou on his side, but it's getting late, so it's time to return home. Sam's taken many precautions to ensure no one finds where he lives, including setting a disguise over his home, which has holographic BTs. We can see that it's been an eventful 11 months, as Sam and Lou have grown really close to each other. He's in a much happier mood than he was in Death Stranding 1, now that he has something to live for. During their mealtime, Fragile comes to visit Sam. Fragile was another porter and the leader of Fragile Express, a private porter company that functioned a lot like Bridges did for the UCA, delivering packages for those in need. We remember from the first game that she was betrayed by a man named Higgs and forced to run through Timefall in order to save a city from being destroyed in a nuclear explosion. She saved the city, but the Timefall aged her body significantly. She vowed to get revenge on Higgs for this, but in the end decided not to kill him, believing that leaving him stranded on the beach was a much more apt fate. She also notably uses the front door for once, and that's because her teleport abilities are no longer functional. Due to overuse, she's contracted a syndrome called jump shock. She's also got some rather interesting hands. It's stated that her hands belong to someone who is not of this world anymore, and that they are linked to her soul via the beach, although who this person is unclear. She's here with a proposition, and that's for Sam to link up Mexico to the chiral network. Lots has changed in the past 11 months. Bridges, the organization behind the chiral network within the UCA, is no longer running the show. All of Sam's friends from the first game have split up and gone their separate ways as well. Di Hardman is no longer president of the UCA. Distribution of equipment and cargo is being handled by a new automated system called APAS 4000. And Fragile has started a new group called Drawbridge. Drawbridge operates like Fragile Express did back north, delivering packages to places not connected to the chiral network. But she wants Sam to extend that chiral network south to here in Mexico. The UCA sees the benefits of the chiral network and wants the world to be connected to it, so that they can overcome the Death Stranding together. But if the UCA were to go into other territories and link up nodes there, it would be seen as expansionist. The UCA could then be seen as planning to invade and colonize these former countries for itself if it were the ones in charge. So they hired the private company Drawbridge to do it, serving as a drawbridge between the countries. Drawbridge has then hired the one man who linked up the UCA to link up Mexico. You could choose not to take the job here, but all it does is flash back to the previous cutscene, before forcing you to choose yes, so there is no choice here. Sam decides to accept the job, but he can't take Lou with him, so in the meantime Fragile will play babysitter while Sam does what he does best. Surprisingly, linking up Mexico is not nearly as hard as initially thought. Back in America, Sam was on the second expedition through the country, so the terminals, knots, and way stations were already there. He just needed to link his Cupid to them. With Mexico not being a part of the expedition, you'd think this would require much more legwork, but Amelie had actually sent another expedition south at the same time, so all the terminals are still waiting there for him, just like before. Along the way, Sam will come across some BTs. Back in the day, Lou as his bridge baby would have allowed him to see the direction that the BTs are in. But without Lou, navigating through BT territory should be much harder. However, his dooms seem to have gone up. Dooms are a rare condition that gives people different abilities. Fragile's teleport is a good example. Depending on your Doom level, you can have a greater connection to the other side, and thus better abilities. Sam used to be able to only sense BTs, but now his Doom level has gone up, and he no longer needs a bridge baby to see them. Although it is unclear how he managed to level up his Dooms, so to speak. Higgs was the only one to increase his power level due to his connection with Amelie, but that seems to be an exception to the rule. His final stop in Mexico is at the former Geophysics Research Lab. Here is where he meets with Deadman. Deadman was there since the beginning, always serving as a guide and helper for Sam and his expedition. All living souls in Death Stranding have a beach, all except Deadman. Deadman was born via in vitro fertilization, using gene donors and an artificial womb. After his birth, something occurred, almost like a malfunction in the body, which left him with several organs missing. As such, the doctors had to find even more donors for him. As he says himself, he is Frankenstein's monster, a being assembled from the pieces of others. Because of this, he never manifested a Ka, or a soul, and thus without a soul, he had no beach. He's always wanted to find his beach if he ever had one, but he's always come up short. During the game, he became rather interested in the Bridge Baby program, inquiring about how it was created and why certain aspects were kept secret. It was due to his snooping that we know so much about the program. Here in Death Stranding 2, he decided to come south to continue his search for the beach. He has a personal message for Sam that is important, but he also has a message which contains some vital information regarding his trip here. There is a massive tar belt that separates the southern part of Mexico. They tried to send air and sea vehicles across, but to no avail. The chiralium made it impossible for each type of vehicle to cross. But they managed to find a new species of bird not native to the region, along with the presence of what they call the Plate Gate. When Sam completed his connection to the UCA, the Plate Gate emerged in Mexico. It acts as a literal portal, with this Plate Gate connecting to Australia. It means that these two countries that exist on opposite sides of the world can now be connected through this simple portal. Bridges then sent an expedition to establish bases so that the chiral network could expand to Australia, allowing even more countries to be hooked up. That will eventually be Sam's next goal. He's connected the US and Mexico, and now it's time for Australia. Before he leaves though, Deadman tells him one last thing. There is a reason the message he was sent is recorded and why he is not there in person. He has found his beach. It doesn't matter how he was born, he was human, and that was enough to give him a beach. So with one final goodbye, he walks into the waters of his beach, disappearing for good. With Mexico all linked up, it's time for Sam to head back to his home and see Lou and Fragile. But as he approaches, red robots known as ghost mechs appear and attempt to kill him. Sam fights his way through before being surrounded, although he is saved by a suspiciously large red ghost mech who is also a ninja. These ghost mechs were not here just for Sam, but also for Lou and Fragile. While Fragile was babysitting, the mechs came and invaded Sam's home. She attempted to escape through the cargo chute, but was shot while driving her bike. Realizing her limited options, she tries to use her jump abilities to jump Lou away, but that too failed. Both she and Lou were shot, with Lou dying right next to her and Fragile in critical condition. While discussing this event with Sam, something stirred inside the BB pod that used to belong to Lou. A small BT that's taken the shape of Lou back when she was a bridge baby had taken form. Sam over the coming days would sink into a deep depression because of this, even trying to end it multiple times, but due to his repatriation abilities, he would just come back to life. After some time, Fragile came to him and gave him a reason to continue. She recruited him to Drawbridge, said he could grieve and continue forward. His journey involves the plan we discussed earlier, linking up the entirety of Australia. But Sam won't be alone. Fragile and the many others of Drawbridge are here to help, so let's go through them real quick. The first member of Drawbridge is, of course, Fragile, whom we've already discussed. Drawbridge's ship is called the DHV Magellan, whose captain is Tarman. Tarman lived back before the Death Stranding, making him quite old. After the Death Stranding, he and his son would fly the Magellan out onto the tar to study it. They would use the Magellan to find chiral mammals, creatures that lived in the tar, and study them. One day they found a massive whale that looked rather bloated. The whale wasn't pregnant, however, but was carrying with it a host of BT hunters which snatched his son and dragged him into the tar. He attempted to rescue him, but in the middle of doing so, the timefall, lightning, BTs, and his son just vanished, and with it went his right hand. He's never seen his son since, but he's confident he'll find him soon. His right hand, despite being missing from his body, is what allows him to read the currents of the tar and operate the Magellan without getting lost inside it. This is, of course, a play on the tale of Moby Dick, with Tarman serving as an analogy to Captain Ahab, who lost his leg to the great white whale, Moby Dick. However, Ahab vowed to get revenge on the creature, whereas Tarman simply wants to find his son. Although strangely, after his son disappeared, he was visited by a black tar cat with wings. He jokes by saying that he wonders if the cat is a reincarnation of his son. We never actually get to see his son in game though, so that theory isn't exactly off the table. One of the strangest members aboard the ship is Dollman, a man who used to be human but whose soul has now been transported into a doll. His wife was working as a nurse at an isolation ward. One day, the building found itself in a tar tsunami, which swallowed everyone, including his wife. His daughter wanted to see her mother, and with him being a spirit medium, he went to the place of the accident, despite knowing that they would be unsuccessful. The place was surrounded by BTs, but the two had found one they believed to be her. They played one of her favorite songs in hopes that she would recognize it. But this BT, if it even was her to begin with, was long gone. The scream of the BT called hunters to their position, which sank them into the tar. They died not too long after this, but interestingly, his daughter's soul managed to stay inside the doll that she carried. Not wanting her to be confined to such a fate, he managed to push her soul out of the doll while also taking her place. So while both of their bodies have long since passed, his daughter's soul went to the beach and to the land of the dead, while he stays trapped here in the doll. Unfortunately, it seems as though his soul is trapped in the doll forever, but he hopes that one day he'll find a solution and be reunited with his daughter. But for now, he's still a doll, and thus how we earn the name, Dollman. The rest of the bridge's crew is found during their time in Australia. The first of which is Rainey. Rainey is introduced in a rather peculiar way. Sam comes across a woman in a raincoat dancing in the rain. Rain in Death Stranding is timefall, which is known to age anything it touches. This is seen by the bird who collapsed right next to Rainey, yet once she touches it, she can restore the bird, effectively reversing the effects of timefall. Rainey, like the others, also has dooms, with hers making it rain timefall wherever she walks. However, the timefall only exists within a certain perimeter around her. If you get close enough to her, you can experience her other rain, which has the restorative effects, which they've dubbed Corefall. As told by her, whenever she steps outside, timefall falls. As you'd expect, not many took too kindly to this. Many people, including her parents, called her a witch. And so the witch hunts began to find Rainey and lock her up. She lost purpose in her life because of this, but later enrolled in a UCA program to hopefully find purpose as a mother, but then she was afflicted with still baby syndrome. This is a common syndrome that's been on the rise ever since the Death Stranding occurred, where after 7 months the womb of the mother freezes. The baby isn't dying, nor is the mother dealing with any pain. It's just that time has essentially frozen. As such, they can't give birth, so they just stay 7 months pregnant forever. Some people believe that chiral network expansion could solve this syndrome, but for now, many mothers are stuck with their children in their womb without any idea when they will be born. Having lost all hope, she thought of ending it, until Fragile came by and recruited her to Drawbridge. Fragile saw something in her that no one did before. She saw Rainey and her powers as helpful, not destructive. She called her a pharmacon, a Greek word meaning remedy and poison, 2 words whose definitions are opposite. Remedies are meant to heal you, while poison destroys you, exactly like Rainey. But whereas everyone saw her poisonous side and pessimistically assumed the worst, Fragile was willing to embrace the remedy side. She saw in her the ability to heal, and so Rainey has become instrumental in terraforming the country. Due to climate change, human intervention, timefall, and the Death Stranding, the world has been destroyed. But thanks to Rainey's Corefall, she's able to restore these once destroyed lands, showing herself that she isn't built to destroy, but was given these powers to heal the world instead. The next member of Drawbridge is an old friend of Sam's, Hartman. Long ago, Hartman was undergoing heart surgery. His wife and daughter went home to retrieve something, only to be caught in a void out. The hospital where Hartman was being operated on was spared the explosion, but it knocked out the power. This caused his life support to fail, allowing him to visit the beach of the others who were killed in the blast, which included his wife and daughter. But once the power came back on, he was taken back to the land of the living. Ever since then, he's tried to recreate the experiment, where he shuts down his heart, only to use a defibrillator on it 3 minutes later, to travel to a beach and hopefully find the one he was on, so he could be reunited with his family. As we know from Death Stranding 1 though, his experiment has been unsuccessful, and his repeated shocks to his heart have deformed it. So his life has been structured around this very experiment. For 21 minutes, he stays here in the land of the living, dies, stays on the beach for 3 minutes, and then returns only to repeat the cycle over and over again. Something he is still doing in Death Stranding 2, still having now found his wife and child. Although interestingly, the nature of his condition has developed a little. In Death Stranding 2, there are 3 people known as the hydrologist, metagenomicist, and chronobiologist. The last 2 are twins, with their mother being the hydrologist. Each one suffers from a 21-minute syndrome. The chronobiologist, for example, after a period of 21 minutes, will experience better eyesight for 3 minutes, before going back to normal for another 21 minutes, only to repeat this cycle. The metagenomicist even references a 21-minute anxiety association. So it's not just a fluke, this is something that affects many different people. 2 twins, Danny and Michael, are also related to 21. These two were alive before the Death Stranding, making them over 100 years old. They were both killed during an accident around the time of the Death Stranding, but after being pronounced dead for over 21 hours, they magically woke up and have been alive ever since, having never aged a day since. It's never been officially stated why these emotions exist within some humans. The hydrologist believes, though, that it may have to do with Earth's earliest life forms. The first organisms on Earth were formed from various elements in the ancient oceans that combined into complex life forms. The theory suggests that all living creatures today have some form of internal memory of this process, with the rhythms of the waves and the tides held within us, and through them, the rhythms of the Earth itself. But at the moment, it's simply just a theory. However, while we may never know the true meaning behind this phenomenon, I think I know why Kojima chose number 21 specifically. In 1907, a physician known as Duncan McDougall attempted to find the mass of a soul. He believed that by weighing the subject right when they die, he could learn the mass of a soul. As in theory, if the soul leaves the body after death, then the difference in weight from before they died compared to after would be the weight of a soul. After weighing 6 individuals, he concluded that the soul weighs 21.3 grams, lining up with our 21 to 3 minute cycle. However, I should state that Duncan was lambasted by the scientific community, as most consider his analysis to be inaccurate. This being related to Death Stranding's consistent use of 21 is also just a theory of mine, so don't take it as fact. Regardless, Hartman is now in Australia doing the same thing as before, trying to find his family while also cataloging and researching the beach. He's also equipped himself with an exoskeleton that will suspend his body so that he no longer collapses on the floor when he dies. Further, the water from the beach he ends up in seems to flow into the land of the living in the form of his tears, which he's been collecting for the hydrologist. On board the ship, though, something strange happens. Hartman has been receiving emails from himself, and Fragile was getting ones from Hartman too. No one is sure what's going on, but after enough repeated occurrences, Sam ends up discovering that Deadman is controlling Hartman. See, for those 3 minutes Hartman is on the beach looking for his family, Deadman takes control of his body. Normally, Deadman's soul would be confined to the beach, but for 3 minutes he gets to be in Hartman's body. And that's because Deadman gave Hartman his heart when he passed on. He didn't need it anymore as he would be on the beach, and Hartman's own heart was wearing thin due to the repeated shocks to his system. So Deadman's heart was being used as insurance, a backup in case Hartman's heart stopped working permanently. And since his heart is hooked up to him and kept in a case that he always carries with him, Deadman can assume control of Hartman for 3 minutes. The last 2 members of Drawbridge are unique in that their story continues all the way to the end. As such, we'll only discuss part of their story now and then circle back to them at the end. The first is Tomorrow, a woman Sam meets after being sucked into a mysterious realm. She was initially found roaming the streets of this weird world, but she left it in a chrysalis pod. Tomorrow, like the rest of Drawbridge, also has dooms. She can age things incredibly fast, a power she attempts to control throughout the game, while also being able to sink into the tar, allowing her to travel around unnoticed. Her only drawback is that she seemingly has the mind of a child, as she can be seen sucking her thumb and struggles with basic concepts and questions. But she also struggles with a sense of belonging. She came from a weird world, and it's clear that the real world doesn't suit her, which is why Drawbridge questions what they should do with her. It was after this meeting that she can be heard leaving the Magellan. Sam catches up to her, and through some talking, convinces her to come back and join the team. The crew of the Magellan had already accepted her the moment she came onto their ship, but now she understands what it's like to feel welcomed, to feel what it's like to have a home. And the other member whose story isn't finished just yet is Charlie. Charlie is the Magellan's secret patron. He's helped fund the ship and this journey. He works with the crew to make sure things go smoothly and frequently communicates with Sam regarding his next order. Not much is known about him though. In fact, truth be told, no one knows his name or has ever seen him in person. But like Tomorrow, he too will have his story revealed in due time. That was the basic overview of the crew aboard the DHV Magellan. But seeing as we're still talking about individual stories, let's circle back around and talk about the most important one. The story of Neil Vana, Lucy, and their connection to Sam's baby, Lou. During Sam's time in Australia, he will frequently run into Neil Vana. Each one operates much like Cliff's missions in Death Stranding 1. Sam is forced to battle Neil and his soldiers to escape the world he found himself in. Instead of a battlefield of war like in World War I though, Sam finds himself in places of destruction. Similar to Cliff as well, Neil's backstory is something that is revealed throughout the game, with the crew slowly attempting to piece together the story. As such, lots of info they share is spread out, not completely true or entirely false, thanks to new info they dug up. So to make it easier, let's just go through everything that's true about him, starting from the very beginning. The first memory we have of Neil is when he was a kid, back when his home was attacked by BTs. Neil would be burned by a necklace with the Cancer astrology sign on it, and this burn mark also attached itself to a young girl he was trying to help. He was unable to free her though, so he had to leave her there alone. Years later, Neil Vana would become a porter who worked for Bridges. He wasn't technically a member of Bridges though, more like a contractor who worked under them when a specific job needed to be taken. During his time with Bridges, he would frequently visit a therapist named Lucy. By the end of their meeting, the two learned that they were the young kids they saw back during the attack, having finally reunited, although she is less than happy about how he left her. Neil would then return frequently from here on, but one meeting was particularly notable. Neil seems to have entered the country illegally numerous times, and Bridges soon caught wind of it. They overlooked his crimes though, because of the dirty work he was doing for them. That's because the UCA had him delivering some suspicious cargo. On record, he delivered medical supplies and material across the border. Off the record, he was also delivering pods of brain-dead pregnant women from Mexico to the UCA. Bridges did this to create more BBs. Bridge babies, or BBs as we know, are babies taken from still mothers who are brain-dead, but kept alive at hospitals within the UCA. That's why BBs have umbilical cords and a connection to the beach, which allows them to help porters see the BTs. But this is when Sam enters the picture. Sam was also a porter who worked for Bridges. He also saw Lucy quite frequently. She specialized in dooms, and Sam notably has dooms and repatriation abilities. He also has what's called aphanphasmophobia, or the fear of being touched, which is why Sam always backs away from people in the first game. Lucy helped him overcome these struggles, and he seemed to be showing some real progress. Like with Neil though, their relationship is far past patient and therapist. Lucy and Sam would officially get together and at one point, have a kid. Neil was disappointed to hear this news, as he loved Lucy and thought they would be together. He left the meeting early that day, but returned some days later as Lucy needed his help. Bridges wants Sam and her baby. Sam is a repatriate, meaning he can revive himself after death, making his offspring very valuable. Lucy didn't want Bridges to take her child, so she needed Neil to smuggle her out of the UCA. He called up a few contacts and made a plan to leave within the week. Part of this plan was telling everyone that Neil was the father and not Sam, as they assumed that if they believed it, then Bridges would know that she is not carrying a repatriate's child. That, of course, didn't fool Bridges, but it did convince Sam that he was not the father, and he wouldn't know the real truth until this journey in Australia. When they tried to leave on the day of the plan, they were caught by Bridges. Bridges opened fire and shot Lucy, almost killing her baby in the process. While Neil was busy trying to save her, the Bridges officer from before proposed a deal. They don't care about Neil or Lucy, they just want the baby. So they trade. Neil keeps Lucy, and Bridges gets the baby. Before he could make a choice though, security came in and killed him. Both Lucy and Neil died from their injuries, but their baby was successfully extracted. However, Neil was beginning to necrotize. 48 hours after death, the body starts its stage of necrosis. This is bad, as due to how the world works in Death Stranding now, the soul of the body is trying to return to the original body. We saw this in the intro of the first game, where the body necrotized and then spawned BTs. Due to the antimatter in a BT, if that antimatter touches matter from the real world, it can cause a void out. Which is what ensued later in that cutscene, where Igor was swallowed followed by a massive explosion. The best thing to do is incinerate the body, so that no matter is left behind. But with so little time, the doctors left immediately, knowing a void out was inevitable. Around this time, Sam would visit the hospital and find Lucy dead. After briefly grieving, he took her body with him, but that's when the void out occurred, killing everyone except for Sam, due to him being a repatriate. We learn in both games that the death of Lucy was what caused Sam to distance himself from the UCA. At the start of Death Stranding 1, he had been a freelance porter for over a decade. He left Bridges on bad terms because of this incident, and now we finally know what happened. So what's this obsession with the baby? A conversation with Hartman and Sam clears this up. To make the chiral network, they needed to use bridge babies as sacrifices to create the major city knots we travel to. That's why at the end of Death Stranding 1, our package was a BB pod. Initially, they wanted to use just one bridge baby, calling it a core bridge baby. That bridge baby was going to be BB00, who we learn was Lou. So not only was Lou Sam and Lucy's daughter, but she was set to be used as a sacrifice for the chiral network. However, when they tried to run some tests, their experiments failed, which is why the current system requires a BB per every city knot we connect in Death Stranding 1. Lou was then eventually put under the decommission order, meaning she would be incinerated and killed. However, Amelie had interfered. She took Lou and sent her to a storage facility where it was given the BB-28 classification. Per official records though, Lou was decommissioned, so no one had any reason to suspect that Lou was taken somewhere else. This is why, according to Deadman, there were two BBs with the BB-28 classification. Lou was basically hidden from official records. Somehow though, years later, the BB would then fall into the hands of Igor Frank. who Sam met on his first expedition with Bridges since joining up with them after 11 years. Igor would then get caught by some BTs and give Sam the Bridge Baby, which he would carry with him throughout Death Stranding 1. He grew so attached to the Bridge Baby that he started calling her Lou, not knowing that this was his child the entire time. But as we know, Lou is now dead. But interestingly, it seems like everyone knew that except for Sam. When Lou died, he fell into a deep depression, but that's when the BT version of Lou appeared in the pod. From here on, a BB will manifest in that pod, with Sam believing that Lou is inside there and alive. But the pod is empty, Lou is gone, and his mind has blocked out this memory because he wouldn't be able to come to terms with the loss. There are times where he does recall the event though, even asking Higgs directly if he was the one who killed Lou. But it seems as though as he got deeper into the journey, he started believing his own lie, and that a BB was in the pod the whole time, and that BB was Lou. This is likely why the BB pod is seen flashing throughout the game, going from dark and empty to yellow at times. It's almost like a representation of Sam's mind, where when it's yellow with the BB inside, he's believing the lie, and once it's turned off, he knows there is nothing inside. Eventually he did face the truth, and was deeply upset upon hearing about it, further confirming that he really had believed that Lou was in the pod the whole time. To wrap up this discussion on Neil, it's worth mentioning why Sam is fighting him and why he keeps reappearing. Dollman says that these places are sites of great tragedy, implying that Neil may have been witness to one, and so his realm reflects this. The first location is obviously a reference to his old home, but the others don't seem to have a specific connection. During the first encounter, Neil seems to utter the word Nirvana. This could be assumed to be a slip of the tongue, given his name is Neil Vana, but I think there is some purpose in its use. Nirvana is a Buddhist concept. The idea is that Buddhists will go through a cycle of death and rebirth called samsara. Once broken free of that cycle, the Buddhist will then enter Nirvana, an enlightened state of freedom and joy. In some ways, it's ironic, as Neil's worlds are filled with death and despair. But I think both Neil and Sam experience samsara, albeit briefly. Sam is continually forced to fight Neil until he learns the truth. That's when Neil tells Sam to take care of Lou. Neil is in some ways a lingering spirit, one who stayed behind because of Lou and wanted to make sure that Lou was safe. As such, he's now escaped this cycle, and so his soul can finally pass on, similar to what happened with Cliff Unger. This finally clears up all our character stories within Death Stranding 2. The stories do not come all at the same time, as they are sprinkled throughout Sam's time in Australia. So to catch up, let's talk about this journey with Sam and what exactly happened when he tried to link up the entire country. When we last left off, Sam had just been recruited by Drawbridge to help expand the chiral network. After getting acquainted with the crew, he's also introduced to the president. The previous president used to be Die Hardman, who was inaugurated at the end of Death Stranding 1. But now the typical democratic system is gone, now replaced with APAS. APAS can now monitor public opinion in real time, so they can correct course when needed. This new president is the president of APAC, the private company that oversees APAS. As mentioned earlier, if the UCA were to expand the chiral network through their channels, it could be seen as a threat or expansionist. So APAC serves as a private sector, with no political affiliation, one that simply wants to link up everyone to the chiral network. From here, Sam will go through the entire country, linking up every place he can. I believe there are 37 different stations you can link up with here in Australia. Most of the individuals we meet here are either researchers, scientists, or workers at the distribution centers. Everyone is trying their best to pull their own weight, and trying to do everything they can to overcome the Death Stranding, whether that's by supplying other facilities or researching its unique effects. But they aren't the only people here stationed in Australia. Along with the preppers are lots of bandits. Factions looking to take for their own gain are nothing new in the post-apocalypse, and Death Stranding is no different. Back in the UCA, Sam dealt with lots of mules. Guys who targeted other porters because they were obsessed with cargo and making deliveries. They were too attached to the dopamine that came from receiving likes from preppers and chased that to the bitter end. They never killed anyone though, as they understood the effects of void outs and knew that without people they couldn't get their high, so they made sure to only attack people non-lethally. The same is true for the bandits in Mexico. They too only attack people non-lethally, but they stole cargo for themselves. They wanted to survive without the preppers of the chiral network, so they stole supplies from porters to keep their stockpiles fresh. Here in Australia, it's much of the same. Brigands are a non-lethal task force who also take cargo for their benefit, but notably reject all forms of foreign tech like the chiral network. They're often considered modern-day Luddites. Luddites were members of a movement back in the 19th century who opposed automated machinery. They were worried about the quality of their products and were concerned about workers' pay, as machines didn't need to be paid and could, in theory, produce more product. In response, they conducted many raids during their time, most of which destroyed these automated machines. The Luddite movement then gained traction again in the 20th century, when Neo-Luddism was created. This functions similarly to the old Luddite movement, but opposed more modern elements of technology. The movement nowadays is not nearly as focused as it was back then, and with how digital our age has become, many people oppose certain types of tech over others, while some disagree with all forms across the board. All of them do agree though that technology and its advancement have had more negative effects than positive ones, and that we'd be better off without it. The Brigands, by comparison, is Death Stranding's take on Luddism, as they oppose the chiral network and anything related to it. They've taken notice of how the environment has already been drastically impacted in the form of gatequakes and chiral anomalies, and they believe that the chiral network is at fault. The Brigands then subscribe to the classic ways of survival, pillaging and taking supplies as needed, although like the previous groups, they recognize the dangers of the new world and refuse to kill anyone. The armed survivalists, however, care very little for any of that. They live in isolation, only working amongst themselves, communicating with no one else, not even the aforementioned groups, but they take it to the extreme by shooting anyone they see with lethal rounds. They've also set up bases with mole mines. Mole mines were created by Usada Pekora, Mole mines were created by the data scientist, but her tech was stolen and is now used for nefarious purposes. Now, all of this lethal weaponry should be noted, as they aren't exactly going out of their way to create voidouts. To be honest, we aren't really sure if they care about voidouts. They may be willing to kill and then incinerate the dead bodies afterwards. While knocking someone out will prevent them from attacking you, nothing is stopping them from coming back later. So maybe the armed survivalists are trying to put a stop to that by just killing them instead. Either way, it's an extremely risky doctrine, as voidouts are now much easier to trigger thanks to them. What is rather strange though is that throughout the game, each of these groups gets more and more equipment, including bigger guns and armor. This should only be possible with the use of a chiral printer, but as we've discussed, none of them like the chiral network and aren't hooked up to it. So they would never even consider using that kind of tech. So who is supplying them? Well, that would be the Ghost Mechs, or more specifically, their leader. We briefly saw these Ghost Mechs back in Mexico, and they reappear in Australia as well. The members carry around this large coffin containing their leader, who reveals himself to be none other than Higgs Monaghan. Higgs, as previously stated, was the antagonist of Death Stranding 1. He was a former porter who cursed the world and wanted nothing more than to see humanity die, and so we worked to bring about the last stranding. Deep into the first game, we learned of the existence of extinction entities, beings who act as a bridge through which a Death Stranding occurs. In real life, there have been 5 mass extinction events, often called the Big Five. One you'll likely know of is the dinosaurs that were wiped out when an asteroid struck the planet. Death Stranding twisted this by saying that an extinction event was caused by the Death Stranding brought about by an extinction entity. We learned in Death Stranding 1 that Bridget Strand was the new extinction entity. She tried to fight against this feeling though, which caused her body and soul to be split. That's what created Amelie, who is the soul of Bridget. Amelie eventually came in contact with Higgs and told him about the last stranding. Whereas the Death Stranding occurred 5 times, but still allowed the world to continue and evolve, the last stranding would be the end of everything. Higgs and Amelie wanted to hasten the last stranding. See, the last stranding will inevitably occur, but Higgs wanted to speed up the process. He wanted it to happen today rather than tomorrow. But thanks to Sam's efforts, Higgs was defeated, now trapped on the beach to roam forever, while Amelie stayed on her beach as well. She was convinced by Sam to stave off the last stranding. Again, it will happen one way or another, but she's staying on the beach to halt it as much as possible, with the hope that humanity will find a solution by the time it arrives. But now, all of a sudden, Higgs is back. He says that he is here to take revenge on Fragile and Sam. He wants them both dead, while also creating a world run on violence and fear. Sam, however, is a repatriate, so Higgs decides to torture him. He'll keep him alive long enough to see his friends and world die, and then kill him over and over until he can't take it. He can't break him physically, but he can break him mentally, which is good enough for Higgs. Higgs clarifies that he is not actually alive. He's not here physically like Sam is. He's still stuck on the beach, but through the tar and what's called the ghost field, he can remotely control these mechs from a safe distance. That's why when Higgs is defeated in the numerous times he finds himself in battle, he doesn't actually die despite suffering very fatal injuries. But what is his actual objective? Well, to discuss that, let's talk about the ending of Death Stranding 2. The end of the game starts around the time Sam links up the final knot in Australia. While on his way there, he is attacked by Higgs and his ghost mechs, only to be saved by the Red Samurai again. It's revealed that it's actually been Deadman the whole time, who's been able to assume control of the Samurai and use it to protect Sam. At the end of the terminal knot, he is attacked by Higgs once more before Fragile and Sam put him down. But as Sam walks to the bridge of the DHV Magellan, he learns the truth. Firstly, the president of APAC was the one who empowered Higgs. It's been a game-long debate whether or not Charlie, the President, or AIPAC has been secretly deceiving the crew of the Magellan. The President admits that he was the one who gave Higgs his Ghost Mech army, which in turn allowed him to supply the other bandit groups within Australia. As the President says, humanity works better under a common enemy. Without Higgs, there is very little threat to our mission. The BTs are a problem, sure, but I'm sure you've likely also surmised how easy they are to maneuver around in-game. Higgs was the real threat, and it's because of this existential threat to human existence that caused the rest of humanity here to form bonds. Think about it. Everyone we met mentioned Higgs and his army, and everyone had some role to play in helping humanity, whether that be defeating Higgs or overcoming the Death Stranding. The President believed this to be a necessary step to strengthen humanity's connections to each other. The President then reveals that he isn't a human, but merely a representative of APAS. The name of the automated system run by AIPAC is APAS 4000. This number is intentional. Some time ago, a void out occurred in the UCA, killing 4,000 people. Each one died by the same explosion, so they all landed on the same beach, along with the APAS data center. They were subjected to a convergence, where all 4,000 souls and the APAS data center merged together, creating a singular entity. It was through this that they found their own solution to the Death Stranding. You'll recall that APAS is an automated porter system. Now that the chiral network is linked to the UCA, Mexico, and Australia, APAS can expand its reach, and the new placates that emerged after reconnecting Australia means more countries can come under their command. This will mean that more and more places will rely on automated porters, and since they are automated, they can be told where to go and thus won't accidentally stumble into a BT field. It's part of their zero void out policy, which removes the human element from mail delivery so as to prevent void outs. While sound in theory, consider that in Death Stranding 1, Die Hardman tells us that before the Death Stranding they also automated mail and cargo delivery, but went back to human porters as many people wanted that human element back into the equation. The President is well aware of this. APAS determined that evolutionary stagnation begets extinction. We must continue to evolve to move on, so to speak. The President uses the example of how some sea creatures evolved to live on land. Had they not evolved in such a manner, they would have stayed in the ocean and been left behind. He then goes on to say that travel and migration are the root cause of this evolution. If that species had just stayed in the water, the future species that would come after it would not have evolved to live on the land. And so, with that in mind, recall that all of humanity lives in shelters underground, and only the porters are those who travel, serving as a direct connection between everyone. With APAS, they no longer need human porters, and thus the only people who can travel can't. Everyone will then be living underground, separated from each other. This is what APAS wants. See, human connection is vital to our species. Talking, communicating, and forming bonds are a part of the human experience. Without that, we aren't really human anymore. So, over time, due to the lack of porters and in-person connection, humanity will experience a lack of stimulus, and with that lack of stimulus comes stagnation, and stagnation begets extinction. Now, while this sounds like the President is trying to kill humanity, that's actually not true. This connection of the chiral network between the countries has been dubbed the Chiralverse. The President believes that eventually humanity will die off as a species, but everyone's soul will live on in eternity in the Chiralverse. As time goes on, APAS will not only keep watch over the humans, but also the other species as well, including the BTs. They can exert control over the Gazer BTs, so by being in control, they can manipulate things to how they see fit. Humans will thrive and survive the Death Stranding, just as Sam and everyone else had wanted, but just not as humans, rather as souls in the Chiralverse. However, Charlie, or should I say, Die Hardman, rejects this notion. Charlie has been controlled by Die Hardman the whole time, playing the role of a secret patron to ensure things went over smoothly. See, he doesn't agree with AIPAC, APAS, the President, none of it, and he knew what they planned to do, so he crossed them. APAS had commissioned Lochner from the first game to create a new Cupid, the item we use to link up knots in way stations. She, along with her twin sister Malingan, were the creators of the first Cupid, so it's only natural that APAS sought her out. However, Lochner declined, but Die Hardman caught wind of this conversation and convinced her to go through with it. The new Cupid design that we use for the second game allows us to not only restrict connection but also the flow of information, meaning it can not only facilitate connections like the way stations and knots we've been connecting so far, but also sever them, specifically the ones between their servers and the dead. Meaning APAS will go back to being a tool, an assistant, not some all-encompassing watcher and guider of humanity. Now, it's important to note that Die Hardman and APAS want the same thing. They want to overcome the Death Stranding. APAS believes that it could sidestep the issue by stagnating humanity and letting them live in the Chiralverse. Die Hardman believes that forsaking our flesh and freedoms wouldn't make us human. In the same way that the Porter system went back to humans instead of robots because that human connection was necessary, removing that which makes us human is non-negotiable. Now, is the President's plan easier and guaranteed to overcome the Death Stranding? Probably. Die Hardman is without a doubt losing a valuable option, but humans have always been known to overcome anything, and once more, if we aren't actually human, then what's the point? Basically, Die Hardman will return us to what we were before the Death Stranding, a community of people who cared, loved, and helped each other, just as we're doing now, albeit on a much smaller scale. Death Stranding has always been a game about connection, human connection, and the bonds that we share with each other, and Die Hardman wants to continue this human connection. As he says himself, quote, "We would rather strive to achieve the impossible, while remaining true to ourselves, to struggle on against the odds in search of new lands and new worlds. The physical sensation of movement is something we all crave, that unity of body and soul." That's what being human is all about. Human connection is incredibly valuable, it's part of what makes us human. And Die Hardman sees APAS's solution as the opposite, one that would remove our free will and human connection, intentionally stagnating us so that we can solve the Death Stranding problem without considering what we would lose in the process. Is it better to give up everything that makes us human to survive, removing our sense of touch, smell, sight, and even our will to continue forward? Or is it worth retaining that human element but continuing to struggle against something that may be impossible to solve? But humanity has always struggled as a species, and yet we've overcome it with new technologies and inventions. Hell, they've even managed to survive the Death Stranding, so what's one more problem? I can think of no better way to end this discussion than quoting the final line of the Chiral-verse plan corpus. But the question remains, can a species really be considered to have avoided extinction if its members exist only as souls? Die Hardman then activates the Cupid connecting all the linked continents to connect everyone and eventually build a bridge, a drawbridge even, towards a better future. If only that promise for a better future lasted. As right after this, the Red Samurai reappears. While it was Dead Man before, it's no longer under his control. Higgs is controlling the samurai now. See, he's always wanted revenge for what Amelie did to him, betraying him in favor of Sam and sealing away her beach so that the Last Stranding could not be enacted. He learned that all he needed was a connection to Amelie and her beach, and he could reappear there once more, and tomorrow is that connection. For see, she is not only an extinction entity, she's also Sam's daughter. When Tomorrow and Higgs fought, he grabbed a tuft of her hair and analyzed it, revealing that it was indeed a match. Higgs then takes Tomorrow and goes to the beach, while the rest of the crew find a way there. They don't know what beach he is on, but they can get there through the same method they used in the first game, jumping to the beach while carrying an item with a connection. Except Fragile can't make the jump, and the only items of the possible connection would be at Sam's shelter back in Mexico. But they have a plan. Sam uses the photo of Bridget, him, and Lucy as their catalyst, and then uses the powers of every Doom user to hopefully lessen the load on Fragile. As the two start the jump, both Fragile and Sam kiss. They have been with each other through thick and thin for years, so it's only natural that such a bond grew into something stronger. We then see all of the Doom users, and even a few others not on the ship, like Tarman's son, Mama, and Lakna, a representation of the connections and bonds each of them shares with each other. Through this, they were able to land on the correct beach. The plan is for Sam to make it to the end and stop Higgs, while the rest of the crew fights off the BTs. At the very end is the real Higgs, seeing as we are on the beach. He talks about the loneliness and solitude that comes from being on this beach for thousands and thousands of years, thanks to time flowing differently here. Higgs couldn't take it and he thought of ending it, but right when he was on the edge of oblivion, he found APAS. As we know, they worked with Higgs and gave him his Ghost Mech army to encourage the connections of humanity. But he, of course, didn't really care for all that, and merely worked to carry out his own goal of enacting the Last Stranding. What ensues is a final boss fight between Sam and Higgs in classic Kojima fashion, with a guitar showdown and health bars. After Sam defeats Higgs, it seems as though he is too late, as Tomorrow is taken away, but out pops a giant baby, which crushes Higgs and is very happy to see Sam. See, that baby is Lou. Better yet, Tomorrow is Lou. So there's a lot to go over, so let's break this down. We've already discussed the nature of Lou when talking about Lucy and Neo, so let's continue from there. As we know, Sam would meet with Igor in Death Stranding 1 during a BT attack. Sam would be given Igor's bridge baby, who he named Lou. Lou would then stay with Sam during the events of Death Stranding 2. While Sam was out connecting Mexico, Fragile was babysitting her, but then Higgs and his mechs attacked the shelter. What we knew at the time is that Lou died and Fragile barely survived, but that's not entirely true. As Fragile tells it, when she was shot, the impact managed to separate her body and soul, with her soul going to the beach. As we know, time flows differently there, so she experienced death on the other side. But here in the real world, since time is slower here compared to the beach, she was still alive. Her body had yet to catch up. Her death was delayed, so to speak. This is something we actually saw happen to Mama in Death Stranding 1. Mama died when she was pregnant, but only survived because of her connection her baby had to the other side. So when Sam cut her umbilical cord, it makes sense why she died not too long after. Her death was similarly delayed. But while Fragile's body was laying there unconscious, her soul was still moving. See, Fragile told us that she tried to jump Lou away from Higgs, but it was actually Lou who was communicating with the lost souls of the beach. When Lou died, Fragile's soul thought that Lou would be happier with those people she called out to. So she took Lou to the other side, and one of those people there was Neil Vana. As Lou went to the other side, the chrysalis pod came to form, and out popped Tomorrow. Lou, just all grown up. This also transitions neatly to our first cutscene with Neil, where we first saw Tomorrow, and why she acts like a toddler, because she was literally a baby before her chrysalis pod. Fragile didn't remember any of this until they landed on Apas's beach, which is when she knew that her body would give out soon, and why she dies during the battle with Higgs. And Tomorrow had absolutely no memory of any of this until the very end. But the question remains, why did the scene unfold the way it did? So firstly, Tomorrow being an extinction entity is not something we have a clear understanding of. It's never been explained how extinction entities are chosen, or how the role was passed from Amelie to Tomorrow. Amelie sealed off her higher beach to prevent the last stranding, but as far as we're aware, she's still alive, just stuck on her beach, which could explain her brief appearances. But how Tomorrow became the new extinction entity is not clear because we still aren't sure how one is even chosen. I believe the reason why the last stranding was stopped is due to the same reason Sam stopped it before. He showed love to Amelie back then, showed her the value of connection. Tomorrow, through her connections with the Magellan crew, was given a chance to see the beauty of life, so she may have been able to stop it thanks to her seeing the positive sides of life in this world, unlike Higgs who's only seen it as a stain. It's also still not fully clear why she went from a grown adult to a massive baby and then back to an adult again, but part of me wonders if it's a metaphor. You may have noticed these strange angel bugs in the cutscenes. A common food source in Death Stranding is cryptobiotes. There are some in Sam's private room. They are a weird creature that only appeared after the Death Stranding, and yet their life cycle and purpose are still a mystery to some. According to the available documentation, they undergo a specific metamorphosis during their life cycle. After some time, they develop chrysalises and move to a space between this world and the next. After spending many decades in this chrysalis form, cryptobiotes emerge as adults and appear in the world in the form of angel bugs. Then, they'll eventually shed their skin and adopt the appearance of a fetus in the womb, where they are known as the fetus bugs. This sounds eerily similar to what happened with Lou, where she started as a baby, was taken to a space between time to be put into a chrysalis, came out as an adult named Tomorrow, only to then revert back to a fetus/baby during the ending. Now, I'm not saying Tomorrow is a cryptobiote. She's obviously human, as we know from our discussion with Neil. If I were to take a guess, though, I would say that it's some kind of metaphor for Tomorrow's role in the world now. These angel bugs are everywhere in this game, and angelic imagery is all around her. From the angel bug accessory Deadman gave her to the fact that she has wings on her outfit when she was a baby. Angels in the biblical text do lots of things, but I believe they also watch over humanity, so maybe that's what it's hinting at. This is admittedly just a theory of mine, so once again, don't take it as fact, although I would love to know if you thought of something else. But there could still be some truth to it, because at the very end of the game, she's seen taking up the same role as her father. While delivering packages, she flips through her photos, showing us that Rainey has finally given birth. She's also taken up Fragile's auxiliary arms and her smoking habits, and she kept the doll of Dollman, although the doll looks a little bit different this time, exactly like how the doll looked before his soul had entered it, meaning he finally managed to break free from the doll and join his daughter. She even kept the BB pod Deadman gave her despite not needing one. Her bond with the DHV Magellan crew is what brought her here. As Fragile says, death cannot tear us apart. So whether they be off on their own or off to the beach, she will always be surrounded by the family she made along the way. We are shaped by the experiences we have and the people we meet, and the crew of the Magellan had turned Tomorrow into what she is now. She is Tomorrow, the future, the next generation, and her bonds will likely have a positive impact on the future thanks to the crew, which in turn creates a domino effect. And a lot of that can be owed to Sam, as Sam not only saved Tomorrow, his daughter, but also Tomorrow, aka the future, by stopping the last stranding again, thus bringing us to the end of Death Stranding 2. Thank you all for watching today, and I hope you enjoyed. And once again, huge thank you to PlayStation for sponsoring this video. If you like story content like this, then feel free to check out my other story videos here on the channel. Thank you to my returning viewers for coming back to another video, and to the patrons who continue to support the work I do. Take care everyone. Goodbye.